night was quiet, and inside the control room of the Space Center, computers hummed softly. The Hubble telescope had been sending back data all day, and most of it was the same as always. Stars, planets, dust, in the endless dark of space. But then, something strange appeared on the screens. A light that should have been steady began to dim, flicker, and vanish for a few seconds. It came back, but again it dimmed, and this time the pattern was too sharp to be a mistake. Dr. Marcus, a senior astronomer, leaned closer to the monitor. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it might be his imagination, but the numbers on the screen confirmed it. The star was being blocked by something enormous, and it wasn't natural. Run the analysis again, he ordered in a calm but tense voice. The younger scientist at the console nodded and quickly typed commands. The computer repeated the process. The result was the same. The light from the distant star was being interrupted in a way that looked mechanical, almost like something with edges, not like a planet, not like a comet, not like dust. Whispers began to spread around the control room. One researcher muttered, "It looks like a structure." Another laughed nervously, trying to calm himself. But the silence in the room grew heavy. Everyone knew space was full of mysteries. Yet, this was different. This was not chaos of nature. This was order. This was design. Hubble had captured faint images as well. The photographs showed a dark shape stretching across the star's light. It was massive, too massive to be a ship, too regular to be a natural object. Dr. Marcus's heart beat faster. For years he had studied galaxies, and nothing had ever prepared him for this. He whispered, almost to himself, "This could change everything." The team gathered around the central screen. One of the younger women, a new recruit, pointed at the jagged shadow. "It almost looks like towers," she said softly. Her words made everyone freeze. Towers, buildings, a city. But this was not on a planet. This was in space, floating near a distant star. How could such a thing exist? The scientists tried to explain it away. Maybe it was a cluster of asteroids. Maybe the telescope was glitching. But no one could escape the feeling that deep in the darkness of the galaxy, someone or something had built this. The control room felt colder. No one laughed now. The younger staff exchanged nervous looks. They were trained to deal with data, with numbers, not with the unknown. Dr. Marcus stepped back, his mind racing. If this was real, it would be the most important discovery in human history, and the most dangerous. Because if there was a structure, there were builders. And if there were builders, then humanity was not alone. He turned to the group and said, "We keep this quiet for now. No one outside this room speaks of it." The researchers nodded reluctantly. Some wanted to shout it to the world, but fear held them back. Fear of the unknown, fear of what might come next. One of the computers beeped loudly, pulling everyone's attention back. More data came through. This time, it showed something worse. The pattern of light was not random. It was repeating in intervals, almost like a signal, almost like code. The rhythm of the star's dimming looked intentional. It was as if the structure was not only there, but also speaking. The room fell silent again. Every heartbeat seemed louder. Dr. Marcus swallowed hard. The world outside was sleeping peacefully. Nobody knew that above their heads, across the vast void, something enormous was waiting, a secret that could not stay hidden forever. And yet, in that moment, every scientist in the room understood one thing. Life on Earth would never be the same. The first strange signal had been received, and with it, the beginning of humanity's greatest mystery. The morning sun rose over Washington, but inside NASA headquarters, the mood was far from calm. The strange signal from Hubble had already reached the highest offices. Scientists who worked overnight were ordered to hand over all raw data. Hard drives were locked away. Files were encrypted. And security guards stood by the doors. It was clear this was not to leave the building. Dr. Marcus walked into a small meeting room where a group of top officials sat around a polished table. On the wall, the faint image from Hubble flickered, blurry but terrifying. The shadow of the giant structure stretched across the light of the distant star. A silence filled the room until one man finally spoke. His voice was sharp. This discovery does not go public. Not now, not ever. Marcus clenched his fists under the table. He was a scientist, and science was about truth. It's about discovery. But these men, they were not thinking about truth. They were thinking about control. Why hide it? Marcus asked carefully. The official at the head of the table adjusted his glasses. His eyes were cold. Because people will panic. The world is not ready. The younger scientists exchanged uneasy glances. They had joined NASA with dreams of discovery, not secrecy. Now they were being told to bury the greatest find in human history. One woman raised her voice softly. But sir, what if the pattern is communication? What if they are speaking to us? The official slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. We are not speaking to them. Do you understand? We are not inviting the unknown to our doorstep outside the meeting. Rumors spread through the halls. Engineers whispered. In break rooms, janitors overheard fragments. The Hubble saw something, they said in hushed tones. Something not natural. Nobody had the full story. But already the air was heavy with secrets. Late at night, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the image. The shadow across the star burned into his memory. He thought of all the history books, all the people who dreamed of this moment, proof of something greater. And here he was, watching it being buried in silence. A young assistant knocked gently on his door. Dr. Marcus, they want me to delete the backups. She whispered nervously. Her eyes showed fear, but also curiosity. Marcus sighed. Do as they say, but keep one copy. Hide it somewhere safe. The assistant hesitated, then nodded quickly, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. Back in the main lab, conversations turned darker. One researcher whispered, what if they already knew? What if this isn't the first time? Another replied, you think NASA has been hiding this for years? The man shrugged. Why not? You think this is the first signal we've received? The fear grew stronger. What if this was not new? What if governments had always known and kept the truth locked away? Marcus could no longer ignore the gnawing thought in his mind. If the structure was real, then someone built it. And if someone built it, they were advanced, powerful, far beyond anything Earth had. Could humanity survive such knowledge? The next morning, Marcus was summoned again, this time to a smaller office, dimly lit. Only one man waiting inside. The man was dressed in black, his face stern. He spoke in a calm but heavy tone. Dr. Marcus, you will continue your research, but only under direct supervision. You will not speak to the press, not even to your family. If you leak this, your career ends, and more than your career may end. Do you understand? Marcus nodded slowly, but inside, anger burned. He was being silenced, and so was the truth. As he walked out, he noticed cameras installed in corners that had never been there before. Every hallway felt like a prison. Every step echoed with control. That night, when the building was empty, Marcus returned to the lab. He sat in front of the Hubble feed again, staring at the silent signal. The star dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. The rhythm was steady, almost like a heartbeat. Marcus whispered to himself, it's alive. Or, it wants to be heard. His heart pounded as he thought of what would happen if the public knew. Would there be chaos, fear, wars, collapse? Or would it unite humanity like never before? He pressed his hands against his face, torn between duty and truth. In the end, he knew one thing. Secrets this big never stay buried forever. Someone would talk. Someone always talks. Far away, across the city. A reporter for a small science journal received an anonymous message in her inbox. Attached was a single blurry image of a shadow blocking a star. No words, no explanation, only the picture. Her hands trembled as she stared at it. She knew at once this was no ordinary leak. Something monumental had been found. And someone inside NASA was whispering the truth. The stage was set. The whispers had begun. And soon the world would know that humanity was no longer alone. The night was calm in the city, but inside a small apartment, a reporter named Claire sat frozen in front of her computer. On the screen was the strange picture she had received. It showed the faint outline of something dark stretching across the light of a distant star. At first glance, it looked like a smudge, a blur, a meaningless shadow. But the longer she stared, the clearer it became. This was not random. This was not natural. It almost looked like a structure. Claire zoomed in on the image. She saw jagged lines, sharp angles, and shapes that reminded her of towers. It was as if a city floated in the middle of space, blocking the starlight. Her heart raced. She whispered, "This can't be real." But deep inside, she knew this was too strange, too detailed to be an accident. She checked the email again. No name, no sender, only the picture. Someone inside NASA had risked everything to send this to her. Claire was no stranger. Too Lik-Shi had written stories on politics, on science fraud, even on military secrets. But this was bigger than anything she had ever seen. If she was right, this single blurry image could prove that humanity was not alone. By morning, the picture had spread like fire across the internet. First on small science forums, then on social media, then on global news feeds. The world woke up to headlines, screaming about an alien megastructure. NASA hiding the truth, shouted one site. City in space, asked another. Millions of people stared at the shadow, each person seeing something different. Some claimed it was a Dyson Sphere, a structure built to harvest energy from a star. Others said it looked like a fortress, maybe even a weapon. Conspiracies exploded across every corner of the web. Meanwhile, inside NASA, chaos erupted. Officials scrambled to shut down discussions, calling the photo fake. They released statements saying the image was distorted data. They said the telescope had glitched, that people were overreacting. But the denials only fueled the fire. The harder they tried to bury it, the more people believed it was real. Dr. Marcus watched the news from his office with heavy eyes. He recognized the image instantly. It was the same picture they had sworn to keep hidden. Someone had leaked it. His first reaction was fear for the person who had sent it. But then, a spark of hope lit in his chest. The truth was out. No one could erase it now. Across the world, amateur astronomers turned their telescopes to the same star. Within days, blurry confirmations began to appear. They too saw strange, dimming, unnatural patterns. The internet exploded again, if ordinary. People could see it. Then NASA's denial was a lie. Claire received hundreds of messages in her inbox. Some praised her for sharing the picture. Others warned her to stop. One email chilled her to the bone. It said, "You are playing with fire. Stop now or pay the price." She sat back in her chair, staring at the words. Her hands trembled, but she knew she couldn't stop. If this was real, the world had a right to know. In coffee shops, in classrooms, in late-night conversations, people everywhere asked the same question. What is it? Structure, a city, a machine, or something beyond imagination? And the darker question followed. Who built it? Governments scrambled. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Military officials demanded answers. What if the structure was moving? What if it was coming toward Earth? But the truth was clear. Nobody had control anymore. The image had slipped into the public's hands. And it could not be erased. One evening, as the debate raged across the globe, Marcus sat alone with the data. He compared the leaked picture with the original readings. The star's light dimmed in perfect sequence. Bright, dark, bright, dark. It was not random. It was repeating. It looked like a pattern, almost like a code. He whispered to himself, "They're sending a message." The thought sent shivers down his spine. The world was already in chaos over the image alone. If people learned it was a signal, a deliberate communication, panic would sweep across every nation. And yet, a part of him felt awe. Somewhere, out there in the endless galaxy, something intelligent had built this, and they wanted to be heard. Meanwhile, Claire prepared her next article. She knew the government would come after her, but she also knew the story was unstoppable. She typed the headline carefully, her fingers shaking with both fear and excitement. Leaked image confirms NASA hiding proof of alien structure. It may be sending a message. She pressed publish. In that moment, the entire world changed again. The mystery was no longer a secret inside NASA. It belonged to humanity, but hidden behind closed doors. Powerful men and women prepared their own plans. They would not allow the truth to spread without a fight. And somewhere, far away in the dark, the giant alien structure kept its silent rhythm, as if watching, as if waiting. The leaked image had shaken the world. But what came next was even more disturbing. While news stations debated and social media argued, deep inside NASA's locked laboratories, a handful of scientists kept working quietly. They were told to monitor the strange star, only to prove that the leaked photo was a mistake. But instead of mistakes, they found something far worse. The dimming of the star was not random. The light faded and returned in exact timing. Short blink, long blink, short blink, long blink. It repeated again and again. It was too precise, too perfect. It was a signal. Dr. Marcus stared at the graphs on his screen, his mouth dry. The universe was filled with random events, but this was not random. This was intention. This was language. He leaned closer, whispering, "They are speaking." The younger scientists around him exchanged worried looks. One of them, a thin man with shaking hands, asked, "Do we tell the officials?" Marcus hesitated, his mind racing. If the government knew, they would bury it deeper. They would lock away the data, silence everyone, and the truth would vanish again. He shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Let us be sure." Night after night, they studied the dimming light. The pattern grew clearer. It was not just random code. It was structured, almost like mathematics, almost like music, like someone was tapping on the universe, waiting for someone to tap back. Marcus wrote down the sequence. His heart pounded as he read it again and again. It felt alive. It felt like a voice calling across the stars. But who was calling? And why now? Meanwhile, outside NASA, the world demanded answers. People gathered in protests, shouting for the truth. "Tell us what it is," they cried. Governments stayed silent. Officials repeated the same line. "'Tis only a data error, nothing more." But the denials sounded weak, hollow. The more they denied, the more people believed the opposite. Back in the lab, Marcus and his small team worked in secrecy. They dared not connect their research to the main servers. Instead, they saved files on hidden drives, passing them quietly to one another. Every time the star dimmed, they recorded it. Every time it brightened, they marked the interval. The pattern grew like a language forming before their eyes. One night, the young assistant gasped, "Dr. Marcus, look at this," she whispered. She had plotted the sequence on a chart. The dimming did not just repeat, it built layers. It was as if someone was stacking blocks of meaning on top of each other. Marcus's eyes widened. "This is not just a signal," he said in a hushed voice. "This is communication." For a long moment, no one spoke. The lab was filled only with the hum of machines. Every face looked pale, every eye filled with both awe and fear. The truth was undeniable now. Whatever had built that structure was not silent. It was speaking. But then came the darker thought. If they were sending a message, who was the message meant for? Was it for humanity, or for someone else entirely. Okay, and if it was for us, was it a greeting or a warning? Marcus rubbed his temples, the weight pressing on his chest. He thought of Earth, full of fragile cities, divided nations, endless conflicts. Could humanity even handle such a truth? Could people understand a voice from the stars without turning to fear, chaos, or war? The assistant broke the silence. What if? What if they already know we're here? Her words hung in the air like a shadow. The team looked at each other, none willing to answer. Marcus finally whispered, if they built something that size, they know everything. That night, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at the sequence once more. The pattern pulsed like a heartbeat. It almost felt alive, as if the star itself had been turned into a cosmic beacon. He imagined eyes in the darkness, ancient and powerful, staring back at Earth, watching, waiting at the same time. Claire, the reporter, received another anonymous message. This time, it wasn't a photo, but numbers, long strings of blinking intervals. She didn't understand them, but she knew they were important. Her contact inside NASA was still whispering, still risking everything to push the truth out. She printed the numbers on paper, staring at the strange rhythm. Her gut told her it was more than just light. It was meaning. She decided to call an old friend, Kay, a mathematician, to analyze it. When he looked at the sequence, his face turned pale. This isn't random, he whispered. This is deliberate. Someone is trying to say something. Claire's heart raced. The world had argued about the picture, but this was proof of intention, proof of intelligence, and if she shared it, the entire planet would change again. But fear gripped her heart. What if sharing this brought danger not only to her, but to everyone? Okay? Back inside NASA, Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhausted. He knew the officials were watching, waiting for any slip. He also knew the truth was growing too large to hide. The unseen pattern was becoming clear. The stars were speaking, and sooner or later, someone would have to answer. Asterisk, the tension inside NASA grew heavier with each passing day. The officials tightened security, locking away data, silencing staff, and watching every move. But secrets that big never stay buried. There are always cracks. And through those cracks, the truth begins to leak. One rainy evening, Dr. Marcus received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low and rough. Meet me tonight, outside the old library near Capitol Street. Come. Alone. Before Marcus could ask a question, the call ended. He sat frozen in his office chair, his pulse racing. Who was it? How did they get his number? And what did they want? Against his better judgment, Marcus went. The library stood dark and abandoned. Rain dripping down the stone steps. A figure waited in the shadows. An older man with a hood pulled low. As Marcus approached, the man spoke quietly. You don't know me, but I know you. I worked for NASA years ago. I know what you found. Kay. Marcus stared, his throat dry. The man lifted his head slightly, revealing a weathered face. Okay. Deep lines carved by age and secrets. I was part of a team back in the 90s. He whispered. Hubble saw something then too. A structure, smaller, but the same shape. It's the same shadow. They buried it, just like now. Marcus's heart skipped. It wasn't new. It had happened before. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked carefully. The old man glanced around nervously, as if the rain itself might be listening, because the pattern is not random. It's a message. I tried to warn them back then, but they shut me down. They said the world wasn't ready. His voice broke into anger, but the truth isn't theirs to keep. Marcus leaned closer, his voice urgent. What does the message mean? The old man's eyes flickered with fear. I don't know all of it, but I know this it's not just a hello. It's a warning, and it's not for us. It's for someone else, something else. The words chilled Marcus to his core. If the The signal wasn't meant for Earth. Then, who was it meant for? And what kind of warning could travel across the stars? The man shoved a small drive into Marcus's hand. Inside is everything I saved. Documents, recordings, notes. It proves NASA has hidden this for decades. He looked Marcus in the eyes, his voice dropping to a whisper. Be careful. Once you hold the truth, they will come for you too. Before Marcus could reply, the man melted back into the rain, leaving him alone with a drive burning in his palm. Back at his apartment, Marcus plugged it into his private computer. Files filled the screen, old images, reports stamped classified, notes written by hand. He scrolled through them, his breath catching. It was all there. The same star, the same dimming, the same shadow, only smaller and weaker. NASA had known for more than 20 years, but one recording made Marcus's blood run cold. It was a meeting, voices muffled but clear enough. An official voice said, if this structure grows, if it continues to expand, we cannot stop it. The public must never know. Another voice replied, but what if it reaches us? Silence followed. Then the first voice spoke again, firm and final. Then it reaches us. And there's nothing we can do. Marcus sat back in his chair, the weight of those words crushing him. Okay, they knew. They always knew. And they chose silence. The truth was not just being hidden, it was being ignored. Ignored because there was no way to fight it. Meanwhile, Claire, the reporter, received another email late at night. This time, it was not just numbers or images. It was a short message, typed in plain words. They knew in 1995. They're lying to you. Don't stop. Attached was the same recording Marcus had just heard. Claire's eyes widened, her hands trembling as she replayed the chilling words again and again. She realized she was not alone. Others were fighting to push the truth into the light. The next morning, protests grew louder. Crowds gathered outside NASA headquarters, chanting for answers. Officials pushed back harder, sending men in suits. 2 newsrooms, issuing threats, silencing voices. But the truth was like smoke. It could not be held forever. It slipped through cracks, into the hands of people who refused to be quiet. Marcus stood at his office window, looking down at the restless city below. He thought of the old man's warning, of the drive filled with secrets, of the repeating signal from the stars. A storm was coming. He could feel it. The world thought it wanted answers, but Marcus feared the answers might break them. Still, he whispered to himself, the truth must come out, even if it destroys us. Far away, the giant alien structure continued its silent pulse, the unseen pattern growing clearer with each passing day, like a cosmic drumbeat echoing across space. It waited, it warned, and humanity had only begun to understand. Asterisk, the world was no longer calm. The leaked image had sparked fear. The unseen pattern had raised questions, and now the insider's warning had broken trust completely. Everywhere, people argued, some shouting that it was hope, others swearing it was doom, but no one could ignore it anymore. Humanity had to choose. In the streets of New York, giant screens replayed the image again and again. Crowds gathered, pointing at the strange shadow crossing the star. Proof, some cried. We are not alone. Others held signs that read, stop the lies and tell us the message. The air was thick with anger and wonder. It felt as if the whole planet was holding its breath. Inside NASA, tension reached breaking point. Dr. Marcus sat with his small team in a locked room. The old files from the retired engineer lay spread across the table. The repeating signal blinked on the screen, steady and cold. Marcus finally spoke, his voice heavy. We can't bury this anymore. The choice isn't theirs. It belongs to everyone. His assistant nodded, her young face pale but determined. If we release it, the truth will spread everywhere. They can't stop it. But one of the older scientists shook his head. If we release it, The world could fall into chaos. People would panic. Governments will collapse. You don't understand the danger. The debate raged for hours. One side said humanity had the right to know. The other said secrecy was safer. Marcus sat quietly, staring at the code. The pulse of the universe. His heart told him one thing. His mind told him another. Meanwhile, Claire published her biggest article yet. She revealed the recording from 1995, proof that NASA had known for decades. The story exploded across the globe. Trust in the authorities shattered for the first time. Ordinary people began turning their telescopes to the sky in massive numbers. Amateur astronomers confirmed it. The pattern was real, and it was repeating every night in classrooms. Children asked their teachers, "Are they friendly? Will they come here?" In churches, leaders whispered, "What does this mean for our faith?" In government halls, generals demanded, "Is it a threat? Do we prepare for war?" Humanity was split down the middle. Some saw wonder, others saw danger. At the United Nations, world leaders gathered in an emergency session. The chamber buzzed. With fear, some leaders demanded immediate transparency. Others warned against revealing too much. A Russian delegate stood and shouted, "If this is a weapon, we must prepare before it is too late." A European leader replied, "And if it is not a weapon, if it is peace, do you want the first thing they hear from us to be threats?" The hall erupted in shouting. The world itself mirrored in that one room. Division, fear, and fragile hope all clashing together. Back in his apartment, Marcus looked out at the night sky. The stars seemed peaceful, silent, indifferent to human struggles. But he knew one of those stars carried the shadow of something vast. He whispered, "What do you want from us?" As if the builders of the megastructure could hear. That night, another change came. The dimming pattern shifted. Instead of short and long blinks, the sequence stretched, grew faster, then slowed again. It was evolving. The signal was not static, it was alive, responding. The scientists gasped as the data came in. "It's changing," one whispered. "It knows we're watching." The weight of that realization pressed on Marcus's chest. This was not a message lost in time. This was contact, direct, deliberate. The choice was no longer about hiding or revealing. The choice was about answering. Marcus gathered his team, his voice low but steady. "They know we're here. They're waiting for us to respond. The question is, do we?" The room fell silent. No one wanted to be the one to say yes. No one wanted to be the one to say no. If humanity answered, it could be the beginning of something incredible, or the end of everything across the globe. People argued the same, in homes, in universities, in military bases. The question was on every tongue. Do we speak back, or do we stay silent? Claire wrote in her latest article, "This is not just a scientific decision. It is a human decision, one that belongs to us all." Her words spread quickly, stirring debate in every corner of the planet. Marcus sat alone at his desk long after midnight, the repeating signal glowing on the screen. He imagined the builders of the megastructure, ancient beings far beyond comprehension. Did they wait in patience? Did they watch in silence? Or were they already on their way? Humanity had always looked at the stars with wonder. Now the stars were looking back, and the world stood trembling on the edge of its greatest choice. The world was holding its breath. Every news station, every social media feed, every dinner table spoke of only one thing: the alien megastructure and the signal that pulsed like a heartbeat across the galaxy. Some demanded answers, others begged for silence, but no one could escape the weight of the truth. Humanity had reached a point where history could change forever. Dr. Marcus sat in a dim office at NASA, surrounded by files, screens, and old recordings. His eyes were bloodshot from nights without sleep. The signal played again and again, blinking in its strange rhythm. Each time it seemed clearer, closer, heavier. He felt like he was staring at a voice carved into the stars. And for the first time, he realized something terrifying. The message was incomplete. The pattern was not finished. It was building, stretching, as if waiting for a reply. It wanted an answer, and humanity was frozen in fear of giving one. Marcus's assistant entered quietly, her hands shaking as she held a new report. "They've detected movement," she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus looked up sharply. "Movement." She nodded, sliding the report across the table. "The structure. It's not fixed anymore. It's shifting position. It's not random. It's moving closer to the star, as if adjusting." Marcus's heart sank. If it could move, then it was not just a ruin drifting in space. It was alive in purpose, live in design. Someone had built it, and it was not silent. Meanwhile, Claire, the reporter, received another anonymous message. This time, it was not numbers, not blurry images, but a voice recording. She pressed play, and her blood ran cold. It was an official NASA file, dated only weeks earlier. A man's voice spoke calmly. "It's not just a structure. It's responding. It's aware. And now it is moving. We don't know its intention, but it is not dormant." There was a pause. Then the voice added, "If this leaks, the public will panic. But maybe they should know. Because if it keeps moving, it's coming toward us." Claire sat back in her chair, the weight of those words pressing on her chest. She typed quickly, her hands trembling. The world had to know, even if fear followed. She published the story, and within minutes, it spread. Like lightning, people screamed, people prayed, people fell silent in terror. It was no longer about shadows or theories. The alien megastructure was active. It was moving, and nobody knew why. At the United Nations, emergency meetings erupted. Again, some leaders shouted that humanity must send a signal, a greeting, a plea for peace. Others demanded silence, insisting that any response could invite danger. The room became chaos. The future of Earth decided in arguments and fear. Back at NASA, Marcus closed his eyes, his thoughts racing. He had studied the sequence for weeks. The pattern was not random. It was built into something. It felt less like a warning now, and more like a countdown. Each blink, each pulse, one step closer to an end or a beginning. His assistant whispered, "If it reaches us, what happens?" Marcus could not answer. No one could, that night. Marcus found himself alone again in the lab. The lights dimmed, the screens glowed, and the signal pulsed stronger than ever. He leaned closer, whispering to the silent code, "What do you want from us?" The computer beeped, data flowing faster than before. The signal spiked, sharp and sudden, and for a moment, Koa's thought he saw words forming in the numbers, a translation hidden in the rhythm. Koa, his breath caught. It was short. It was simple. It was terrifying. "We are here." Marcus stumbled back in his chair, his skin cold. It was no longer theory, no longer speculation. They were here, not just in the stars, not just in the shadow of a far-off sun. They were watching, listening, waiting across the world. People read the leaked message as it spread online. Some cried in awe. Some screamed in terror. Faith was shaken. Nations trembled. Families held each other close. For centuries, humanity had asked if it was alone. Now, the answer had come, and it was not the one they expected. The megastructure continued its steady movement, closer to its star, closer to alignment, closer to whatever purpose it carried. NASA officials tried to regain control, but it was too late. The truth was free. The world knew. The final revelation was not about whether we were alone. It was about whether we were ready. Marcus sat at his desk, exhausted, broken, but filled with a strange awe. The universe was no longer silent. The question was no longer if. The question now was when. And as the signal pulsed one last time across his screen, he whispered into the quiet room, "Humanity has been noticed. Asterisk.